Hey everyone, it's Ben. I'm Wrench Fetish. I'm coming back to you from my office slash thinking room. I'm thinking about everything that I've done in the last week, and I've come up with this. I'm going to give you a quick little walkthrough in a very rough-shod way of how I made this out of a bunch of other crap. Coming up today, I'm Wrench Fetish. So you can see that I've got my DOM tubing that I'll be using for the shell that's going to get pressed into the spring perches. It is inside of a computer numerical controlled machine, also known as a CNC. I am spinning the inside diameter that's going to be the press fit for the 1-inch 875 outside diameter of my bearings that I will talk about shortly. This is pretty much the most important piece to make on this component or part and assembly. Without this, there would be nothing to hold the bearings. You'd just be hoping they would stay in the car, and they won't. But this will make sure they do not fall out and roll along the street, like the smoke that should pour off the back tires. Hey guys, so I want to just take a few minutes and I want to show you what I've been working on this week. Not a lot of footage of me actually making this part that's in my hand, but there's some pictures along the way. What I got here are my roller bearing spring perches that I talked about in the last video that are going to get stuck into the stock spring perches. I'm cutting out the rubber bushings, I'm cutting out the rubber center axle, and I'm putting these in because these allow the spring perch to articulate independent of the control arm. Otherwise they have a little bit of movement, but they bind a lot because of that rubber bushing. And what happens on both Falcons, Mustangs, Mavericks, any of the small cars that had that same style pivot built into the control arm, they would break shocks under hard cornering, or at least excessive hard cornering. And all that suspension bind causes your car to corner different, or at least just slow down. So what I've done is copied a design that I found online. I stole from a guy. It's pretty open source. One of the gentleman from Open Tracker Racing actually has got articles on the internet about these, and he shows how he does it, the bearings that he uses, the hole saw that he goes through to actually cut out the old spring perches. So I pretty simply bought these bearings from my local. Actually, I didn't buy these locally. I bought these from Big Bearing Supply online, or Carnell Sales, or Carnell Inc. They were a pretty reasonable price. I bought 4 of these things. They have an 7/8 inside diameter, and they have an 1 and 875 outside diameter, or 1 and 7/8 outside diameter on the bearing itself, and they're in a 1/2 inch thick. They're a nice sealed bearing, so they're gonna hopefully last long enough for me to destroy something else on the car. This is 2-inch outside diameter DOM, or drawn over mandrel tubing, that I bought at my local steel supply place, SMC Metal, or the Steel Supermarket. I think I paid 15 bucks for like a 2.5 foot long section of stuff. It was an end cut, so you get a little bit of a discount. I turned them up on a lathe a little bit. I spun some diameters to press fit the bearings in on a machine that I run once in a while. All right, every single day. And now I'm going to continue on the next one. So that's that. Yep, yep. So I'm going to drill this bushing out. Now, I've already got the axle pushed out of the side of this. I'm going to drill out the sleeve that's in this housing for holding the old bushings in. Once that's machined out, then I go and flip it. I'll cut the other side out, and then we can put those inserts that I've already showed you in place. Let's drill. through and it's stuck. Well, in a minute I'll get this off. Please hold. What we got here is just a pretty simple 2-inch outside diameter hole saw. This is something I bought at Home Depot. It's nothing crazy. It's just a Milwaukee. It's not a carbide tip. This is pretty soft steel. The one thing I did change on this is there's a large diameter that goes through this thing. And as you'll see, I've got a block of wood in there right now with a small hole drilled through the center of it. You can't machine these on center of the old bushing, or what would happen is everything would go through the top of the spring perch and you wouldn't be able to mount your shock to this. All right, your shock actually bolts here and you need this space to be flat. So you have to change the location or the center line of this perch or the roller pivot down about 1/4 of an inch. So in order to do that, you can't just float a hole saw over there. It just won't do anything. So I made a wood pin that press fits into there. It has the new hole location off to the bottom. It is drilled 1/4 inch, and I took a piece of 1/4 inch hardened steel pin and I put it in place of the drill that would pilot this normally. Like if you're using it to cut a hole in a door, you would use the drill bit to start the hole, and then the hole saw follows the drilled hole. So in this case, it just kind of slides in like that and it starts cutting. As you can see, one side's already cut out. It's still held in by where it's press fit to the old location. And now I'll just pick up the hole on the other side of it, and this will go in just as it went in on the first side, and I'll have a nice straight location that matches the old pivot point. And as you'll see, it's not square to the body of the spring perch. So I don't know how important it is if that's square to the body or that angle. I don't know how important it is, but that is a factory angle, and I'm going to try and recreate it the best as I can. So let's cut the other side. What was one is now two. Let no man tear apart what someone has put together, unless that man is me, and I've decided it needs to be 2 pieces. All right, man, so here we go. That now, I'm just gonna leave that over there because it doesn't count anymore. It's totally useless, but this is now ready for us to clean up with a little bit of grinder. We'll get some of the paint off of here, or the powder coating, and our new insert is gonna slide right through there. I'm gonna tack weld this thing in. I'm not gonna do all the finish welding here in the garage as my TIG welder is not up and running right now, but I can MIG weld it so that I can actually have this tacked in place. Just kind of verify that I like the way it looks. And then we'll take it somewhere else and we'll do all the finish welding at another time. But let's see what that looks like in place. All right, guys, with the magic of with a little bit of an angle grinder, and a couple of minutes of being aggressive with stuff, you can see that I actually have this insert that I showed you earlier is now in place in the rocker, like I said I would get it, and now it does this. Now that is not a thing that it would have done before. Those rubber bushings, their intent is to hold this thing in place and isolate some, or remove some of the vibration and allow it to pivot to a certain degree, but not freely like this. This should hopefully stiffen up the front end of the car while also freeing up the action of the suspension. I'm not really sure how much harsher the ride's gonna get or how much vibration it's gonna introduce to the chassis, but I guess I'm willing to give that up so that I can have something that's more predictable and easier to control when I go out and start flogging the crap out of my car. Because there's no point in building a car to be nice to it, right? All right, man, kind of a short video for today. So here's one spring perch. It's drilled, it's assembled, and ready to tack weld. I'm gonna catch you once it's all ready for the next step. So what I got here, right there, that is the template that I made to do the Shelby drop on this car. I mentioned in one of the videos that I'd be doing that. That lowers the pivot point of the upper control arm down an inch and back 1/8 of an inch towards the firewall of the car. That allows the camber curve to stay correct as the car goes through its travel. So I just thought I'd show that real quick. This is basically just a template that I bolt on. This block is bolted on with the old control arm bolt locations, and I've got these two new ones are in the pattern that it's supposed to go, down and back. So now what I can do is just basically take my pistol drill, stick it in, put a drill in those holes, and make new holes, and then I'll bolt it on. And then my car will drive better. So as you can see, we've had a location change. We are no longer in the garage where I've been doing most of the fab work up until now. There is a nice nondescript blue wall to show that things are a little more professional here. I'm not going to say where I'm doing this work, but this is somewhere that I spend a lot of my time. And I think everybody who's working on a car has somewhere they spend a lot more time than they want to. Anyhow, that's how we pay for all this stuff. So the wire feed welder, I was not really happy with the results I got on the first spring perch that I welded together. MIG welding is not my strong suit. I know it's technically easy and it's fast, but I just don't really know how to use it all that well. But I'm a pretty competent TIG welder. I do it a great deal and I trust it. So I have switched now to a 308 stainless steel filler material. This is 1/16 diameter. I'm using a 1/16 tungsten electrode on a Pulsar 100 micro welder. I've got this set for about 100 amps and I am not using a pulse function. I'm just kind of pedaling it along as you do. Much happier with the results here. Where it had to cook off some of the powder coating, as you can see, there's an excessive smoke here, and you'll see some of the discoloration in the flame, some of the orange. That's it cooking off what's left of the powder coating, and even in some cases, some of the grease that was inside of the bearings started to let loose. I did not really think ahead. I pressed the bearings in ahead of time because I was super excited with the little insert assemblies I made, and I welded them in place. That process mangled the bearings and it ruined them. So there are new ones that are going to get pressed into place. But in this case, I know that the holes that the bearings are staying in, they stayed true when welding. Typically things distort quite a bit, but if you can put something in there to heat sink them, they typically stay in pretty decent shape. So I was really happy with this. The powder coating brushed off just that little bit once I hit it up after it was all nice and hot with a wire brush, and I'm really happy with this. I think I may cut apart the other spring perch that I welded together in the garage with the wire feed and redo that process with the TIG welder because I think it works much nicer. That is a microscope to the left side of the screen. Typically use this for microscopic welding of super sensitive little stuff, but in this case don't need a microscope. I can see what I'm doing and just make my way through it. That's how it looks. Well, I hope you've enjoyed my short little clip on how to make roller spring perches for your classic Ford. That's enough for one night. I'm Ben, and this is Wrench Fetish New York. Keep your wrenches spinning, your hole saws turning, and your welders melting steel. We'll see you next time, guys. Bye.